You're listening to the Live Ultra Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the minds of the individuals who take on the world's most extreme challenges. Now, here's your host, Jack Middleton.
Quick introduction to today's episode with Damian Browne, former professional rugby player turned extreme athlete. And he's taken on various challenges in the last few years since retiring from professional rugby. The first of which was Marathon Des Sables back in 2016. Now, Marathon Des Sables is the race I'm training for this year, which has unfortunately been postponed now to September. And from there, then he's gone on to row the Atlantic Ocean. Just an incredible story. And now taking on the 7 summits. So attempting to climb and reach the summit of the highest mountains of each of the 7 continents, 5 of which he has successfully completed so far. Now, at the time of recording this episode, Damian was due to take on Mount Everest in April of this year and was due to fly out in 2 weeks' time. However, similar to MDS, due to COVID-19, a day after this episode was recorded, the Nepali government closed off Everest to climbers. So, look, it's a tough call and it's very disappointed to hear and to see. But I guess these things, they can't be planned for. So I just wanted to give context ahead of today's episode because there was parts that, we're discussing Everest and stuff like that. So just wanted to give context. However, there is a ton of value to be gained in this episode. Damian speaks very honestly, and I think there's a lot to be gained in terms of, how he trains for these extreme challenges and what kind of training he does, not only from a physical standpoint, but also from a mindset standpoint. I mean, with these extreme challenges, you can reach the physical standpoint, but as we'll delve into in the episode, the mind takes over at time, especially when things get dark. So, look, we're going to delve into a lot, and we're also going to touch on Freezbrury, which is a community project that Damian has launched over the last few years, but really gained traction in Ireland this year, which I got involved in. So look, there's tons there. And look, if you enjoyed the episode, I'd really appreciate if you can leave a review on the podcast on iTunes and just share with a friend. Share with one friend that you think might enjoy it or gain value from this episode. And that's ultimately how this podcast is going to grow and help more people. So I'd really appreciate it. Thanks and enjoy this week's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Live Ultra Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Middleton, and today I'm joined with Damian Browne. So he's ran across the Sahara Desert, he's rowed the Atlantic Ocean, and in just a few weeks he will take on Mount Everest as part of the 7 Summits Challenge. Damian is also the man behind Freezbrury, which I participated in a few weeks ago. And collectively, I think you guys raised over 30,000 euros for Pieta House, raising awareness for mental health. So some really big causes there and some really big challenges. So, Damian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Nice to be here.
No worries. Perfect. Well, I just wanted to start off with Freezbrury, just based on the fact that I actually got involved. Now, I didn't do the full Freezbrury, but I did go down to Galway there 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I think we managed 22 or 23 minutes. And I found the experience very challenging and very rewarding. And it'd be good to kind of hear from your side, since you're the man behind Freezbrury, how it actually came about.
Yeah, I thought you found it quite challenging that day, but I'm not surprised because, if you're getting into the water in February in Ireland and you haven't been acclimatized or even had a stimulus of the water, that's a long time to spend in 6 or 7 degree water. So fair play.
For sure.
Freezbrury came about because I am always looking for ways to challenge myself, basically. And I had this idea in the back of my head for a little while. I would say a couple of years probably, and I wasn't too sure what it looked like, but it involved the sea and it involved the cold water and it involved duration. And I talked to a mate of mine, Johnny O'Connor, a little bit about it. In fairness, it was Johnny who came up with the name Freezbrury, but we talked about, getting in throughout the winter, and it's something that I hadn't done up until 2019. I had kind of gone till December latest, and we were going to do it, and then we're going to do winter throughout the winter, sea swimming. And then it just kind of evolved from that. I was thinking, well, what's the challenge here and what could that look like? And then I thought about, well, every day in February. And then I thought about, well, why not add a minute every day? So if you start on 1 minute on the 1st, 2 minutes on the 2nd, all the way up to 28 minutes on the 28th of February, or this year was 29 minutes because we had a leap year. So that was really the genesis of it. And 2019, I decided to do it, give it a go myself, challenge myself, committed to the challenge. And I think it was on January 30th. I just threw it out there on my social medias, Instagram mostly, but on Facebook as well. Seeing if anyone else wanted to get involved. And there was a little bit of a pickup, bit of interest, and I probably had about 12, 13 names at the start who said they were in for it. We just started. I remember that first day. I still remember it quite well. Anybody who gets into the cold waters during the winter will know that there's an element of reluctance and fear and anticipation, and I had all those things that first day. I remember I drove to about 4 different swim spots. I was just trying to build myself up to getting in that first February, and I had been in throughout January, but that was the first day of Freezbrury in 2019, and then got through that month, and there was quite a pickup. There was more people got involved. Some people dropped off, but there was people quite going in, I would say, more than they regularly would. Now, I'm not too sure if they completed the full challenge or not, but when we got to the end, we had, there was quite a kind of significant amount of numbers in little spots around the corner, from Renville and Connemara to Kilkenny in the River Nore, to there was a little bit up in Bray. There was a few lads there, and then there was individuals getting in. So it gained some traction. People got involved late, and people were quite, as far as I could see, people were a little bit they were picking and choosing when they'd go in instead of the consistency that was the challenge. But do you know what? It's not, that's their choice, and it's not like, I don't take that in any way. I'm not like enforcing any rules around this, because that's not really the point. The point is learning from it, and you being accountable for your actions and being committed to something and getting the benefits of that in the end. So if people do that, great. So I just got the impression that people were kind of doing it, maybe every few days, or they do it for a few days, they'd miss a day or whatever. Cool. Doesn't really matter. But by the end, we had a nice kind of gang of people doing it. In fact, we had about 50 people get in at White Strand Beach in Renville and Connemara. We had about 50 in that last day. So that was the first iteration of it. And then this year, there's a couple of lads out in Renville, Diego and Fikra, who were very involved the year before. They got Pieta House involved in the project and brought them into as a kind of a charity element. And, they just, I suppose they took a little bit of interest and ownership in Freezbrury. So they started up a Instagram account this year, and then they pushed it out there. And this year we decided to do it, I suppose, with a little bit more oomph, a little bit more behind it. It wasn't just the 2 days before the start. And we had major traction, like from what it was. I think on day one there was talk of, the lads were telling me they reckon they had about 160 or 70 stories, individual stories, on Instagram, the stories thing, with people hashtagging Freezbrury, and they reposted everything on the official page if you want. And they reckon there was probably, 2, 3, 4 people in most of those clips. So you're talking 400 or 500 people on day one. And listen, it just got out there, and we tried to really bring in, I suppose, do a bit more of a push around the charity side. This year. So we opened up a kind of a group page that anybody could use, to raise funds for their commitment to and their perseverance through Freezbrury. And then there was a few people opened up their own individual pages, and everyone was fundraising for Pieta House, and the people in Kilkenny, which there was a good 20 to 30 down there, were fundraising for Chalk Tom, which is it's the equivalent of Pieta House in Kilkenny, So yeah, that was Freezbrury. That's where it came from, and how it's grown legs in 2 years. And like you said, I think about 3 or 4 days into March, so after it finished, I kind of calculated it was somewhere in the region of about 35 or 6,000 raised, and it's probably moved on a little bit since that. But yeah, and like that's, from I think 7,000 the first year. So an amazing response and amazing support, and a couple of messages that more importantly, I think a couple of messages that I've been sent and read from people just saying like that, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm just quoting these people, is that it's changed their life, because that's what challenge can do, and that's what the cold water can do, and persevering and committing to it and persevering through that. So yeah, listen, it's been nothing but positive. It's been pretty incredible the way it's in 2 years what it's become, and yeah, who knows what it can become.
Yeah, it's fantastic cause, and I even seen, because I would have followed it last year, but I don't think it gained the traction that it has this year. And I'm not sure if that's because social media has kind of taken off in the last year, maybe more so. People are more engaged on Instagram. But I also feel like, at least from my own perspective, there kind of has grown in the last few years, maybe a bigger demand for these kind of challenges where people, they might just feel a little bit fed up with the challenges that they're putting themselves in, or something that they can get behind maybe. Like there's been a real rise in the likes of ultra marathons, and even the fact that Ironman has come to Ireland this year. The first full distance Ironman is returning this year with Ironman Cork. And I feel that there is a bigger demand for these kind of challenges, for people kind of maybe trying to test themselves. And I'd just be curious to hear maybe from your side, if you think that's maybe because people are fed up with the day-to-day grind and they want to kind of find out what they're made of, or if there's more to it there where they're just looking to see what they're made of, really. I mean, it'd be good to hear from your side why you think so many people did get behind Freezbrury this year, and maybe just more so, why do you think the trend is growing around these extreme kind of challenges? Because it's not just Freezbrury.
No. Well, if we talk about Freezbrury first, I think this year it just grew simply because we were a little bit more organized. We had an official page, so there was kind of a little bit more context around it for people to relate to. And then the power of numbers is pretty incredible, in particular through social media. But I don't know how they calculate the reach of these things, but if you think about everybody, who might have got involved on one day or another, and then them just hashtagging or tagging the official page, and just the amount of numbers that might have got to them, people getting involved a little bit 2 or 3 days after the start, but that's because they just got what was happening then, so it did really spread, and people, I think when there's another element outside your own goals and your own rewards, when there's a bigger kind of picture to it, around the fundraising side of things, people are more willing to drive that, and push that out there and spread that word, because obviously people in less fortunate circumstances or positions are benefiting, and that's a nice thing to do. So, people don't feel so self-conscious, so they do that. And then that just helps the spread of what's happening, The access as well here in Ireland is really important. So nobody lives too far from a body of water, because of, well, it's Ireland, right? So we're not too far from the sea, no matter where you live. And then, of course, we have lakes and rivers. So it's accessible to many people that way, and it's accessible to any age as well. You don't have to be, you do an Ironman, you have to be in a certain physical position and profile. But getting into the water, you don't have to be. You just have to have a little bit of a drive and want to improve yourself, getting into the cold water, right? And it's a hugely addictive thing then once you do get in, because the benefits of it are astounding, really, in my opinion and in my experience. If it be that physical, just for your body and what it gives you, the connection and the recovery. If you are somebody who trains like me, I do use that for recovery, but also the mental benefits. The clarity it gives you, the boost in mood, and the drive it gives you to push on with your day, if it's something you start your day with, because like nothing is going to be as hard as that from persevering through that. So you're going to be tested, and hopefully you've come through it, and that's a huge boost for anyone, so that just helps this kind of the whole the whole movement just expand, and it gets to people that it might normally get to, or might be hard to get to, and bring some of them in, and then they do the same thing, and it grows from there. That want in a more general population, that want or that drive towards challenge or testing themselves or getting outside their comfort zone or doing something I think it's a product of the environment we live in. It's a way for people to kind of burst out of that kind of very restrictive society that we've designed. We've all a part of designing it, and it's very safe and it's very comfortable, but it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't sit very well with a lot of people, so they're looking at ways to almost, I want to say, get rid of that feeling it gives them, to get past that. They know there's more, and their way of accessing it now is through challenges that are organized, so you mentioned some there, like, so we see it with marathons, right, all around the country. Now we see it, and then there's people do a marathon, they want, wow, that felt good, I put in a shift of work, I put a preparation time, it was hard, I persevered through that, then I took on the challenge, I achieved what I wanted to achieve, made me feel good. I'm breaking this down to real simple terms. I want more of that feeling in my life. So they look for, well, what's a little bit more than a marathon? Well, maybe I'll try an ultra marathon. Or, I like the marathon, but I wouldn't mind a bit more variety. Maybe I'll try a half Ironman or an Ironman, or I'll try something in the, I don't know, up a mountain, some sort of, these kind of ultra races over ranges, and I know they do one in the Mam Turks in Connemara, and there's a very famous one in England called the Spine Race, the Montane Spine Race, so there's all sorts of access. And then we have more softer versions, like I would deem them softer versions, but like Tough Mudder and Spartan races. So you've got that, so there's loads of different ways and means that people can access that now, and and it just becomes addictive. Exploring your potential as a human becomes very addictive because of the rewards that you get from achieving certain, whatever it may be you want to achieve, and it's not just, I'm not just talking about the achievement, but what goes into the achievement and how hard it is, and you get through it or you don't, so that's that's kind of where I see this growth of interest coming from, and I think it will only continue. The easier life becomes, especially in Western worlds, the more demand there will be, and the more want, and the more extreme certain things are going to become.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, and it just kind of came to me there because it's hard to kind of put it into words at times. But I think we live in a world of instant gratification, where people can log on to Instagram and click a story, and they get that dopamine hit, and straight away they're satisfied for that split moment. But oftentimes I feel that people may be unconsciously doing this to maybe fill a void in their life. But when it comes to taking on these extreme challenges, and even the likes of Freezbrury that doesn't have, the monetary cost and the equipment costs of bigger challenges like Everest, which we're going to come on to, I think that whole delayed gratification of like striving towards something, there's a lot of purpose there that people get from it. For sure. But I think that's what it really boils down to, is like we live in this social media driven world where everything's fighting for your attention, and everything's fighting for that short, quick win, that shortcut. But even from participating in Freezebrury, and other challenges, there is no real shortcut. And as tough as that is, that's the real beauty, and that's the real reward. From my own experiences, but
because only you know what you've gone through. Nobody can tell you how hard it was. Only you know that, and only you know the kind of dark places you've gone into in, let's say, minutes during Freezebrury, or certain days during Freezebrury, or a part of your preparation for a marathon that day you didn't want to run, and the last thing in the world you wanted to do was lace up your trainers, but you did, and you got out and you got it done. Like, only you know that battle, and then only you can benefit from the rewards and the feeling of doing that. And when you eventually get to achieve what you want to achieve, it's incredibly empowering that you've come through this kind of journey that has not been easy. It's not been linear. There's been knockbacks, there's been resistance, there's been hurdles, there's been setbacks, but you've persevered and you've got to where you wanted in a very imperfect way. And that feeling you get there, and that knowledge and experience you get there from that journey is just it's very fulfilling. And like you said, it leaves a very kind of deep reward that grows over time, and you could associate it with lots of things like, self-confidence, self-respect, self-worth, and those things are all incredibly healthy things to aim for and to strive for and to have drive towards. And that, almost that, because they're so important to us as individuals and people, that drives that really healthy circle, and it's the furthest thing from that instant gratification that, we're surrounded by, and that chases us, and that we chase at times when we're in weaker places. And on some level, we can communicate that to ourselves, and that communication just helps kind of fuel that drive to continue to search for more of that.
Absolutely. So, speaking of challenges that might not be so linear, I'd be interested to hear about your 7 Summits experience so far. So I'd be curious maybe to start with Denali, just because by the sounds of it from speaking offline, that was probably the least straightforward summit of your 7 summits so far. So it'd be good to maybe start there, and then we'll kind of work our way towards Everest, which is happening in a few weeks now. So
Denali, for those who don't know, I suppose, is the highest mountain on the continent of North America. It's based in Alaska, not that far from Anchorage, and it's an incredibly beautiful mountain. The Alaskan range, generally, well, as far as I could see anyway, is just one of the most stunningly beautiful place in the world. So I did it in June 2019, and the difference between Denali and any other of the 7 summits is that it's very well protected by the National Park Service in America, in that they only let so many numbers on it a year, and there's no it's only American companies can guide. There's 5 companies that can guide on there, only American. There's no porters allowed. It's all what would you say, self-sustaining. So like, if whatever I want on the mountain, I have to carry with me and bring with me. So it's no other mountain in the 7 summits is like that. You know, you always have access to people to carry something for you, whereas here it's just you know, you have to burden the load. It's normally a 21-day expedition, or the maximum days allowed on the mountain is 21 days. But if it goes really well and you have amazing weather, which there isn't on Denali, you can get it done in about 14 on a commercial expedition. And our group got it done in 15. Like, we just had perfect weather while we were on the mountain. But it's notorious for its cold, and it's notorious for its wind, because it's so high in the latitudes. And it's so exposed, and so it's near the Bering Strait. It's not that far, you know, in terms of mountains and geography. So you're getting a lot of wind, weather patterns coming in off that, which is, you know, you're extreme. So, but we were lucky. My group was lucky. We were the last group of. I went with American Alpine Institute and Jagged Globe combined, and we were the last group of their season number 6. And I think the only group who got the same weather as us, basically, was the group with number 5 who were on the mountain similar time. So, yeah, again, there's an element of luck. And it's just a beast of a mountain. You know, your gear in total weighs about between 50 to 70 kilos. So between your rucksack and you pull a sled, you know, that's the weight you have. And it's, what else is there to say about Denali? You know, it's all glacial travel. So you fly in on these little twin otter planes. Basically, you know, fits about 7 people on board, and then all the gear. It lands on the glacier. You pull your stuff off, and you load your stuff onto the sleds, and then you just take off, and you're on a glacier for the whole time. So, you know, the dangers of great glacial travel are obviously your crevices. So you're roped up from the start. So it's not like a soft entry like you would have on most mountains, you know, where on day 1 you're trekking from 2,000 meters to 2,700 or 800. But it's like, you know, you have, you know, just trekking boots on, and you know, you don't have any technical gear. Here you're like straight into double boots. You know, you're straight into being able to access all your heavy layers in case it does start to snow, in case some weather system hits, which often can, you know. So day 1 actually was a tough day because it's a very early start. You start in Anchorage, something like 3 o'clock in the morning. You get on a bus or a minibus. You head to Talisker. You get your gear weighed. You wait around there all day until they get a window to fly onto the glacier. So you're straight onto the Twin Otter, and then you move. You go from there's no such thing as base camp. You go straight from, once you land, you load up and you walk and you go to Camp 1, and it's a bit of a trek. So I think we were up like 21 hours or something by the time we got to Camp 1. It's the first time actually in everything I've done, the first time I've had hallucinations. I was falling asleep while walking. I didn't even know it was possible, but it happened to me a few times where I'd wake up and I was still walking. That might sound weird to your listeners, but that's the experience I had. Right. And just because of the lack of sleep, I suppose, and I was still probably a little bit jet lagged from the big travel to Alaska. So that was day 1 on Denali.
Jesus. Do you think that do you feel like that kind of set the tone then for when it came to actually summiting Denali? Because I think I remember seeing one of your Instagram posts up, and I don't think you had any words to describe your experience summiting Denali. I don't know if it was because of, experiencing hallucinations again on the summit attempt. And I think you described earlier it was kind of like a daydream. Like, what actually happened on the summit attempt for Denali?
So what makes Denali again unique to any other mountain is, so normally on a mountain, the work you put in is when you load up your backpack in the morning and then you walk, hike, trek, climb for the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. And when you get into camp, everything else is done for you. And Denali doesn't work that way. When you get into camp, you got to go to work and you got to flatten out terraces for tents. So all the groups' tents have to be put up and the cook tent has to be put up. Now, the guides normally take care of the cook tent because there's quite a bit of digging out, but you have to do work around digging and shifting snow. And when you're at those sort of altitudes, so we went from Camp 3 to Camp 4. So 300 meters to about 5,200 meters. And then the plan was to go from Camp 4 to base camp to summit the next day. We got to Camp 4, we got to do some work, right? There was no ready-made camp for us to set up in. So we had to flatten out a large area of snow so where we could put our tents so we could sleep well. Sleep is so important because you're not rested, So when you're working, shoveling snow for an hour and a half after you've just walked for 9 hours or whatever it is with 25, 30 kilos on your back, you become dehydrated really, really quickly. No matter how much fluids you're attempting to put into yourself. And the mistake I made was I just did too much work when I got into camp. And, there was 6 of us in our group, we had a couple of girls. And I suppose I just said, to myself, I'll do most of their work because they're tired and, it's been a huge day for them. But I kind of cost myself a little bit that I didn't... the huge amount of calories and energy I would have burnt in that time, I never replaced it. And then we were the tents got diminished from 3 to 2. So we went from, was there 6 or 7? There was 7 of us, sorry. So we went from 3 tents, 7 of us between 3 tents. So me and another guy had a tent to ourselves into 7 into 2 tents. So it went from 3 people in one tent to 4 in the other. And I was in the 4. Kind of down to the fact that we had the luxury of just been 2 up to that point. What that meant was that I was in the middle of the 4 because one of the guys needed to get out at night because he wasn't feeling I think he was quite claustrophobic. What that meant was that I didn't even want to drink that much water because I knew I was going to have to piss during the night, and that means getting out of the tent and waking everyone else up because I'll fill up my 1.5, 2 liter piss bottle during the night anyway. So I didn't, before I knew it, I was totally dehydrated, but then I wasn't even attempting to rehydrate because I was worried about pissing. So basically I woke up the next morning and I was already, I could just feel, I'm in a bad place here physically. I just haven't recovered. I didn't get enough food into me as well. The night before I had it's freeze-dried food at that height. So somebody gave me a meal that was 400 calories. I would have needed 1,400 calories, So I wasn't fueled well. And then from the start, I could feel weak. Because your body's working so hard just to process the environment and process the calories you have in it for energy at that level. You burn through it really quickly. And if you don't have enough in your system, and then if you don't have replacements ready, you get in a bad place very quickly. And I got in a bad place very quickly. And I remember going up the Autobahn, which is just out of Cab 4. They call it the Autobahn. It's this big sweeping long ridge across the face of Denali Pass. And it's actually called the Autobahn because the speed the European climbers used to fall off it Yeah, and when you fall off it, that's it. It's like it's brown bread. Yeah. So now they have loads of little pickets, you know, so you clip in, and it's safe, like, but it's kept its name. So yeah, I remember going up that, and it was a big long sleeping ridge, and my fucking hands were really cold, and I was struggling with that, and I was struggling with how I was feeling. I was like, fuck, this is going to be a seriously long day, man. And you know, you're not even that long out of Camp 4. It's a long way to go, and you're feeling tired already, and you're panicked with the cold in your hands. And yeah, and I was right. The next 12 hours turned into one of the longest days of my life, because I just couldn't get any, I had no moment where, apart from when we sat down and rested, would I say I had any sort of composure. I was just in this constant state of hyperventilation and almost a minor panic around cold, around energy, around breathing. I just couldn't control my breathing. No matter what I did, I just really struggled to get it under any control. And yeah, until we got to basically the top of a thing called Pig Hill. And once you get to the top of Pig Hill, it's a very shallow ridge line to the summit. So once we got to the top, it's like topping out. So I didn't know that, and I got to the top and I could see the summit, and it wasn't much of an incline. It was just a long ridge, and I was like, thank fucking God that's over, man, because it was just a nightmare. It was just, I mean, yeah, you know, earlier I said to you, it was a bit of a, even now, it's hard for me to figure out what it was, because it was just confusion and panic and almost like some sort of weird state I was in for a long time. Like I said, some sort of like fucking bad dream. Yeah, I was present, but I wasn't present. It was very, very bizarre. And I thought I'd figure it out, you know, when I got back to reality. I thought I'd kind of come to some sort of terms of what I was, but I still haven't. I don't really know what kind of went on, but I got there anyway.
That's the main thing anyway. That's fair enough. Look, I'm curious to kind of learn about your preparation for Everest from a physical standpoint and also from a mental standpoint. Because by the sounds of it with Denali, I mean, obviously you'd done the physical and the mindset, training and preparation leading up to the event or leading up to the summit attempt. Well, it sounds to me like the mental really carried you through when the physical kind of let you down. So, yeah, I'll be curious to learn about what way you train, first of all, physically, and then maybe more specifically, what kind of things you're doing to train your mindset side of things ahead of attempting Everest now in the next few weeks.
Physical prep has gone very well. We're about 3 weeks out now, and I feel I couldn't really be in a much better position. Two of my goals around physical prep were a certain weight. So my goal that I picked a number out of my arse, but kind of on the back of experience, I thought if I can get to 105 kilos, that would set me up really well for achieving what I want to achieve, you know. And I'm somebody who kind of walks around like 120 kilos normally, you know. So that's a big ask for me to get down to that sort of weight. I haven't been that weight since I was 15 probably. But right now I'm sitting here looking at you and I'm about 106 and a half. So, and I still have 3 weeks to go. So I'll probably get well under the 105. The reason that's important is because mass is the amount of mass you have, in particular muscle mass, the more oxygen you need. The higher you go, Everest is, you know, not dumbing it down for anyone, the highest point on earth, the less oxygen there is, kind of. So they're not conducive, right? So there's no point in being 130 kilos. So I was 122 kilos in October. So what's that, 5 months ago or something? So I've lost 16, 15 kilos since then, you know. So that's been really important and will be, you know, for the next few weeks. So that's all around, I suppose, your calorie expenditure and diet restriction. Up until the first kind of, when I program all my own training because I'm interested in that sort of stuff, and I've just found it very, I'm interested in it. I have experience with it, and I can't, because of my profile, been a rugby player in the past, I can't just pick up any generic program and stick to it and get any benefit from it, because I am compromised in many ways from rugby. So I like to write all my own programs. So and kind of trial things and play with things and, experiment a little bit through it, but also nobody knows my body as well as me and my mind and how it works. So there's a huge element of importance to that. So in the start of the Everest prep, it was very kind of general strength and conditioning. Now, you also have to factor in, I was training for rowing as well for that first kind of 3.5-4 months. I was training to compete in the rowing championships. So the two things aren't very well aligned, but I felt I managed it well. So I did a lot of strength and conditioning work. I did a lot of work on the ergs. And then once that rowing was I felt in a really good place physically for that. I hadn't competed yet, but I started bringing in some mountaineering training. And then, it was kind of a transition between the two just during the competition. And then the minute that was over, I stopped any and all resistance training because I don't need any more mass. Actually, I need less mass. So I don't need to be doing any weight training. And then I just started banging into lots of volume work on a thing called a VersaClimber, and then trying to drop off weight. Diet changed quite a bit. And just putting in the work around that and trying to get the weight off, trying to get mass off to a certain extent, but that'll look after itself, and getting time on my feet then in the mountains. And then around breathing and altitude, obviously we don't have any altitude that we can access here in Ireland. So your choices are, there's some altitude chambers that you can go and train in, but for me, it doesn't really seem that conducive, or it's not that conducive to actual mountaineering, because you really need to be living at that altitude. So you can get altitude tents. They're very expensive to sleep in. Or you can do a thing called butikio breathing, which is a technique originally Russian that recreates the blood oxygen saturation levels you will experience at altitude. So again, you're just training your body to be used to what is going to come in terms of the altitude and the effects that's going to have on your body. So that's something that's worked well for me in the past, and I'm doing it at the moment.
Nice. So do you feel that the mental preparation almost comes as a side effect from the intention that you bring into your training and the intensity that you bring into your training? Or is there things that you do separate to your physical training that specifically trains your mindset?
There is things exterior to physical training that can help a lot. Visualization, really powerful, and affirmations. So. The visualization, you can visualize a few different ways. You can visualize first person or third person, right? So through your own eyes. It's really good for learning a new skill, or preparing a trek, and trying to figure out the problems you may face. Or you can visualize third person, which is more perspective changing and emotionally charged. So through someone else's eyes, seeing you do, almost like watching yourself in a movie or whatever. So I use both of them and have both of them at my disposal for different scenarios that might come up. But it's important that you've done them before and you're ready and prepared. So visualization is I can't recommend it enough for people for something to use in your life. When do you need mental strength? Is when you are in bad scenarios. So being prepared for those really bad scenarios, haven't lived them already. Through visualization is a great way. So I'd be a huge believer and proponent of negative visualization. If you visualize the absolute worst thing that can go wrong in an event or in a challenge or in anything, I feel you're ready for the spectrum of stuff that can come up to that very worst thing. So why not delve into that, try and figure that out, and be ready for it. And then you're almost kind of cutting out a lot of stuff in the middle a lot of time because you're ready for the worst. So if anything else comes at you, you're ready, and then like affirmations then is just basically what, it might also be known as like mantras, and it's just a way to rewire your subconscious, so it works well around beliefs and changing your state, the way you think about things. It's good to pick maybe like just have 1, 2, 3. And what I've done in the past, I'm not actually doing it at the moment, but what I've done in the past is, have a couple or 2 or 3, and then just say them to yourselves, repeat them to yourself every morning. And it like I said, it just rewires a part of your brain that's very hard to get at, your subconscious. And then, when you're really, and the shit hits the fan and stuff's going down, that rewiring can really come to help, because like I said, you've changed the belief about yourself, hopefully in the affirmations. So like when it comes to a decision, what may have to be made, I think you're going to fall more on the positive side, the more that you've done, rather than on the negative side of the decision. So those are 2 elements of exterior of training, or things that can be used in to prepare for your training sessions. But in training, then, there's it's a little bit different, right? Because it depends on the type of training, the intensity you're working at. Are you properly been challenged to your limits, and what's that doing to your mental state, and how are you controlling that mental state? Or are your standards a little bit below where they should be in the challenge you're bringing to yourself in training? And then are you giving yourself little outs mentally? Because if you are, those outs are going to come back and catch you when the real thing is happening. So you want to prepare, you want everything to be as hard as it can be in your training, so you're prepared for the worst case scenario in the actual event.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense to me. And I suppose one arena that you've kind of used over the years from following you on social media has been the Irish Indoor Rowing Championships. I'm really interested to learn specifically around the 2K test, because it is known as one of the hardest and most physically demanding tests that you can put yourself under, incredible mental stress as well. So I'd be interested to kind of learn, what does your self-talk look like before you take on the challenge of the 2K test in that arena?
Well, I'll just start by, I suppose, reinforcing what you just said about 2K. I've nothing but admiration for rowers and what they put themselves through mentally and physically in this test. Because for me, it's the litmus test for any sort of mental processes you might have. It's a long time to spend under an extreme amount of psychological and physiological stress. It's just a beast, and you will learn a lot about yourself when you put yourself through one, because the quit is going to come early, the voice to quit, to stop, the doubts, and you're not even halfway. You're nowhere near halfway, and you're going to find out a lot about yourself in those preceding minutes. I mean, for me, it's love-hate, I love what I get after I finish that, but the build-up is just nothing but anxiousness and stress and horrendous anticipation over about a week, because I know I'm going to put myself into a space where, you know, no matter how fit you are, no matter how good you are at rowing, you're going to go into a space where it's like it's just horrendous psychologically. You know, you just want to stop, you want to quit. You're completely outcome oriented. So I know I'm going to go into that place, and I know there's going to be decisions that have to be made in that place. Like, do I continue or do I stop? And the thing that scares me, I think, most, or the thing that makes me so anxious, is that I never know. No matter how many times I've done it, no matter how well I've done in the tests, every time you put yourself into that position, you do not know what the answer you're going to choose at that time is. Are you going to stop and are you quitting? And that's because I've done both. I have quit at times. And that's not a nice feeling. And that sits with you, that fucking failure, that decision you made to quit, that sits with you, and it eats away at you, and it eats away at me. And my big strength is not that I can push myself into these places, it's that I hold myself accountable enough to push myself back. I hold myself to a higher standard all the time, to push myself back and to have another go at it and another go. And I am relentless with that, and I will achieve what I want to achieve eventually. It's not that I don't fall down sometimes, it's not that I don't quit, it's that I'm honest enough with myself to find a way past that quit. And that's what rowing, that's what the 2K row test constantly gives you. No matter how, like I said, how good you are, it's going to look into your soul and say, right, what are you made of today, motherfucker? Huge proponent of rowing generally, because rowing is really hard, like the training on the indoor erg. And of course, finding a way to challenge yourself there. And I just find that no matter how good I am in my house, and I can push myself into places that are personal bests on the rower with nobody watching, the door closed, just me versus me. But when I go to a championship, when I go to an indoor event, that just brings something else out of me. That's very, very, I can't access it without that competition. And that's why I go, because I know it can bring me to new levels, and I know it'll demand more of me. In a way, it's easier, but in a way, it's harder. You know, the easier part is that, you know, you're surrounded by people and everyone's going for it, and it's competition, you know. Competition brings that something out of us. You're racing people, you're racing yourself. So that's the easier part. I got on you. Like
rowing's kind of become it's become an exercise that I've kind of learned to love, in a machine I've learned to love for those reasons. Like it puts you in the pain cave straight away. Similar to planking that I would have discussed in one of the solo episodes. It just brings you into that present moment, and it just makes you question everything. And yes, sometimes you don't like those answers, and that's really what it pulls back. Similar to Freezbrury, when you're in that cold, you know, vulnerable state, it just kind of makes you question those answers. And like I'm saying, sometimes you don't like those answers, but no. It's a very, very honest way to test yourself. For sure. Yeah,
you're going to see very, very clearly some parts of yourself, some characteristics. And like you said, maybe you don't like them. But that's just information. And that you can, with that information, you can change that answer that you got, you know. It's work, it's really hard work, and it's perseverance, and it's a lot, but I think just been really, like you said, honest around that, and then come back for more, and just been relentless, because the machine is relentless and rowing is relentless, so you be relentless against it.
Nice one. Well, look, I'm gonna try and wrap up with the lightning round. I know your parking ticket's nearly up, so we'll look to wrap it up. So the first question I have for the lightning round is, imagine you could enter a time machine and travel back to day one of embarking on your journey into this world of endurance and taking on these extreme challenges. What is the number one piece of advice that you would tell yourself to set yourself up for success?
what a question.
It's maybe a heavy one to begin with.
Just let me give you I'll have a little bit. I know it's a lightning round, but I need to think about this. Do the work.
No shortcuts.
I mean, we live in this world now where everyone's talk about hacks and shortcuts and do this, and if you tried that, but at the end of the day, if you do the work you know that needs to be done, you'll achieve what you want to achieve. So do the work. Okay, make a plan. That's really important. But sometimes it's not as important as you think. Doing the work, and just being relentless around that and holding yourself accountable and looking into the details and doing that work around that. And do the work.
Makes sense. Perfect. So just leading on then, if you're only to read one book for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
I used to be really into fiction and stories, and I loved The Count of Monte Cristo. Loved it. And it's looks like about 6 books put together. So I think just for time-wise, for the rest of my life. But there's a couple of books I think I should mention because they're very aligned with what we're talking about in the world we live in. And there's a great book called Unbeatable Mind by Mark Devine, who's an ex-SEAL guy, and I read it. I've read it, and I've gone back to it and referenced it many, many times. And every time I go back and reference it, there's something I feel I forgot about that, or I missed that, or I relearned something. So I think that'd be the one that I would, considering the way I want to live my life, that'd be the one I would have.
Oh, very good. I've actually read that book. It's very jam-packed. I mean, you could reread it over and over again and you'd pick up on something new, because somebody was saying to me that at different points in your life, different parts of the book might speak to you. So you might read it the first time and it might be the box breathing method that I've actually gained a lot of value from. But you could read it a second time and it might be the visualization aspect or something new. So I can attest it's a fantastic book.
There's loads in it, yeah. Sorry.
For sure. So if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
It's amazing speaking about different parts of your life. I think if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, it's going to be very different to right now. I think I would have been more inclined to pick some like tearaways 10 years ago, like, Richard Harris or Oliver Reed and these types of characters, just for the crack you'd have at
for sure.
But now,
I think Leo Daniels on the last episode said his family.
Really,
he's a big family man, yeah. So.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, maybe I was thinking of it in the wrong context. Great question. I don't have. Who would I eat dinner with?
Can you even bring them back from the dead?
Yeah, sure. So. That's kind of the way I was thinking as well. Like, who's dead that I'd actually like to meet?
Oh, for sure.
I find there's some interesting characters, like Mark Devine, I find is an interesting character. There's a guy called Ken Wilber, who I've been kind of delving a little bit into his stuff. He's kind of a philosopher, and he's created this almost theory of everything, so theory of the way we live our lives. It's called the integral theory. And I've been trying to read some books. It's like absolutely way over my head, but I feel like when I read some of it that I can understand, I feel like it's exactly the way, what I feel from what I do, So he'd be a guy I'd love to sit down and try and, have a conversation with. Fascinating guy, and in fairness, I've heard him on a couple of podcasts, and he although his books are quite the language is quite, I want to say technical. He does break it down very, very simply. So I think those two guys, anyway, I wouldn't mind sharing a steak with them.
Sounds good. Well, the last question to wrap it all up is, what quote do you live your life by, and why?
I don't have a quote exactly that I live my life by, but a quote I really love, and one that I had just above the hatch of the door, or the hatch of my boat, from the bed basically and the cabin to the outside, was Bruce Lee quote that said, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one or a hard one. And I relate to it, and I enjoy it so much. I give it pride of place. I had quite a few other quotes around. Not that they motivate me, it's just that they give me the perspective at times, so that's what they were there for. And that was one, that was the one that I felt deserved position numero uno.
For sure, yeah. No, it's good to have the reminders, because I guess you've kind of mentioned on other podcasts that you don't need motivating. Like, you're very purpose driven with these challenges, and I can understand that. And I guess that the quotes, they're just little reminders of those values that you're obviously living your life by.
That's it exactly. When you do something that's such a long duration as the role, like, it's a roller coaster, so there's going to be really low moments and really hard times, and you just need sometimes you just need something that'll shift your perspective or bring you back to why you're doing it, or that'll create some sort of shift in your state. And it can be as simple as a quote, or as beautiful as a letter from somebody you love in your family, which I also use. So yeah, I think it's again been prepared for those moments, and those sort of little quotes can help a lot.
Nice one. Yeah, it's powerful stuff. So like, where's the best place people can find you and track the Everest expedition over these next few weeks?
Best place is definitely Instagram. So it's the social media platform I'd be most active on and enjoy the most. So yeah, my username is Auld_Stock, AULD_stock. And I hope to share as much as I can technically, purposely and sincerely with people. It's something I've done in the past, and I hope to be able to share nearly every day with people in some form or other, be it pictures or videos or journals, So I'll endeavour to journal every day of the expedition and what I'm going through, and tools I use around those physical and psychological challenges, and so people can hopefully pick something up from it and learn from it. If not, they get hopefully a nice picture.
I'll definitely be following the journey anyway. So, but look, we're going to leave it there. I know that this parking ticket's probably due to be paid. It's 4:45 now. So the last thing I want is Damian being clamped. Thanks again for taking the time to talk with me today, Damian. Really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best in your expedition to Everest.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of the Live Ultra podcast. I do hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you learned something, and I hope you gained value from it. And if you did, I would ask just one thing and one thing only, that you share this episode with one friend. That's really how the podcast is going to grow and reach more people. So if you can do that, and if you did gain value, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, and see you in next week's episode.